Yeah, so top 10 ways to motivate the students. All right, so let's hit the slide. First and foremost, I wanted to get out the utmost level of respect that I have for teachers. You guys do is unbelievable. It's actually being in the trenches day in and day out and being the change out there. Yeah, we're writing up the behavioral plans and everything, but you guys are implementing that with a bunch of other people around. That's a tough thing. And I know a lot of people said in the past, I remember when I was younger, oh yeah, just be a teacher, you're off in the summer, it's a good racket. No.
One more person say that.
Not everyone can't be a teacher. It's definitely a calling, and you guys are the ones really doing it. So it's an amazing thing. So first and foremost, the level of respect, I wanted to make sure you got that on the record. And the next thing is just how we approach the material overall. Just sit on this thing. It's a little bit nicer like that. Moving to the camera too, instead of having it shine in my face. So approaching the material. I was always real big on self-help books, and one thing I learned was that instead of looking at things and saying, I already know this before, because a lot of the stuff is going to be stuff you know. Instead, saying to yourself, well, how well do I apply it? Or maybe how can I apply it a little bit better? Come on aboard. Now we just started. You okay? Take a chair.
Here, you can use this one. I'll move over.
We literally just started. First thing I was saying is how much. Two more? Okay, good. Last one. Save the best for last. Yeah, just sit down. All right, we're good. We just started the top 10 ways to motivate your students, particularly students who are more of like a little bit of a problem. So the first thing I talked about is the utmost level of respect I have for the teachers. It's just an amazing thing. You guys are actually doing the grunt work day in and day out. So that's a great thing. And the next thing I was saying about approaching material, thing that I learned from self-help books, was don't just look at the stuff and say, well, I know this already. Think, how can I apply this? Or how do I apply this better? It goes a little bit longer that way. Instead of shutting our mind down, instead of growing. As my dad always said, the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement, right? So that's how you got to look at it. You're either growing or you're dying. The same thing with the business, with the plant, the flower, with the person. And has everything to do with, am I content with where I'm at, or am I trying to get better? So we're always trying to get better in everything we do. All right, we can hit the slides, get into it. All right, so the top 10 ways to motivate your child. Number 1, understanding what motivation is. I do my share of motivational speaking, used to bigger audiences, make me feel like there's a lot of people here. But the root word of motivation is motive. That's the first thing. You have to understand what motivation is. It's not just a rah-rah pep talk. What's motivation? It's a motive. When you boil down all of human behavior, whether it's exercising, eating, personal relationships, or learning in school, it comes down to the desire for pleasure and the avoidance of pain, the fear of pain. And so everything we do, fear of pain, desire for pleasure. It's good to know that for yourselves. It's good to know that for your students. It has everything to do with, the biology of our mind. Our reptilian brain was built before our prefrontal cortex and higher level cognition. So every decision you make, pain and pleasure are involved. So we should always be asking ourselves the question, how do I maximize pain and minimize pleasure? Maximize pain, minimize pleasure. And that goes along with how we teach things and the way we present material. Maximize the pleasure, minimize the pain, just to get the kids engaged. Get good at reframing, turning obstacles into opportunities, turning failure into feedback. We don't get frustrated, we get fascinated. First of all, it's just good practice for ourselves so we don't go crazy and lose our minds. And number 2, it's good because we got to teach our kids how to think like that. If they become engaged more than turning off, they're going to be into the material, they're going to get more out of it. Okay, so number 1, understanding motivation. Number 2, a little controversial, but accept that most students really don't like school. Not all students, but most students, right? And I just finished up 23rd grade last year. I did 5 years as an undergrad. Yeah, I tallied up the math and everything. And that's, I guess, not counting like kindergarten and preschool, but 23 years of school, 2 master's degrees and everything. And when the kids come in and they talk to me, they say, I hate school. And I said, listen, I went to school for 23 years and I didn't like school. So, that's fine. That's there, but we know how important education is, and we know that we need this to do the things we want to do later in life. So, knowing that, not all kids are going to like school. Human beings evolve to move. If you watch children playing outside, they just run around for days if you let them. It's because we were born to move, and sitting back passively in the class is not something we were necessarily born to do, which is why it seems like just all students have ADD. Because I think that's the way we were naturally made. We're born to move. So knowing that certain personalities, school thrives in only a few personalities. How many people are really auditory learners or readers? Not as many. And the people who aren't the auditory story learners or the readers, they tend to feel like they're not as smart as the other students, which isn't always the case. Okay, so we have to be aware of that. So if we flip the next slide. If you look at the cone of learning here, so this whole big diagram, it's really passive learning versus active learning. Down at the bottom, really in the toilet down here, is reading and listening to lectures. And that's the predominant style we have in the classroom. The more active, the more engaged we're in, the more likely we are to retain it 2 weeks later. So just by definition, me giving a presentation and giving it 7 times in a row, I'm more likely to retain this than the people, just you guys sitting here just listening to it. So becoming engaged, becoming involved in the material, that's very big. All right? And then next thing is there is hope. Just because your students don't like school, there's still hope because they could like you. And hope stands for hold on, possibilities exist. If they like you, you could engage them, you could get through to them. You can't look at it as they're not going to get any better, or they're not going to they're just not going to get anything out of it. It's, if they like you, you could get more information out of them, and it's all about your likability. Do they like you? I do a lot of assessments with the students, a lot of IQ testing, and after the IQ test, we always sit down, I give them a little interview, and I say, what are your favorite classes? And whether they say history or math or science, I say, why do you like the class? They say nothing about the material. Number one answer, my teacher's nice. Number one. So likability is huge. I read this book, The Likeability Factor. It was awesome. It was similar to Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. They're talking about likability. Likeable people have more friends. They make more money. They live longer. And I'm sure they're better teachers. So we got to work on being likable. And also, kids are more likely to work harder and to listen to someone who they like. Is that true for kids, or is that really just true for all of us? I'm more likely, when I was a wrestler, if I like the coach, I'm more likely to work harder for him. I'm more likely to do things that I don't want to do to please my coach because I like him. Same thing with school. All right? So we can get through to them if we're likable. So the 4 likability elements, again, from the book by Tim Saunders, Likeability Factor. Friendliness, relevance, empathy, and realness. So friendliness, smile. Students are very quick to pick up if you're having a bad day. And they'll point it out to, what's their problem? They'll come to me, my teacher was in a mood today. They're quick, they're watching you, even subtle things. So if you smile, if you're in a good mood, you don't always feel like it. So sometimes you have to fake it till you make it, or fake it till you feel it. So thinking about that, present yourself in a friendly way. And it always happens on the bad days. That's when the students are really paying attention. So be careful about that one. Relevance, be unique. Give the kids a reason to come back to your class or to like your class, other than just because it's mandatory. Having a quote on the day on the board, so they're always looking what the quote of the day is. Or if during classwork they're allowed to listen to maybe some music, some softer music, something like that. Something that gets them to want to be in the class. I didn't remember most of my days in school of those 23 years. I remember the day we did fractions in math where we had M&Ms. I remember the day we sang We Didn't Start the Fire in history class. I remember the day the teacher let us do our classwork laying down on the ground, when things were fun or unique, or even sometimes when a teacher brought up something completely irrelevant to school. Now, I know you have a curriculum to follow. It's not always easy to throw in random things, but anything you can do like that, the students will like it. Okay? Empathy. Remind them that you're similar to them. You're going to like me better if you perceive me as similar to you. If you see me as different than you, you're going to be, maybe he's okay, maybe he's not. But if you look at me and you say, I'm similar to him, you're going to like me better. So you're going to be more likely to listen to me. So show the kids that you are like them, or you were like them at one point in time in your lives. Like I said, I tell the kids all the time, they say, I don't like school. I say, I don't like school either. But that's okay. We still have to do it, and we got to make the best of it. And we start from that premise. So relate to them. And be real. Realness is big. Use their language anytime you can use their slang or talking about pop cultures. You'll be going on presenting the important parts of the material, and then you say Miley Cyrus and all the heads pop up. That's the thing they're going to remember. You bring up Lil Wayne, you bring up, I was looking on Instagram the other day, boom, now you have the kids' attention. Make your point then. All right? So making sure we're doing all those things. Positive reinforcement, I know you're doing that already, but again, just some good reminders. Well, first, the story about when I was at Deborah. So when I was in my doctoral program, I was doing, basically the Meals on Wheels of therapy for children. I would go to people's houses, and I would work with their children and with the parents and do different therapy with them. And one of the dads came from a military, real strict house when he was younger. Military, and it was, you had to do things this way, and he would deal with his child just like that. The kid was a lot more sensitive than he was. And so I told the dad, as nice as I could, he might benefit from a little more positive reinforcement. And the dad stops, and he looks at me, and he goes, I don't necessarily subscribe to that model. Okay. Yeah, talk about being floored. I wasn't used to seeing that or anyone hearing that. At least they'd give it a shot, whatever I said. But the dad said, I don't believe in rewarding the student for something or the kid for doing something he should be doing. And we all tend to think like that at one point in time or another. I thought like that the other day. I was telling a kid who always acts up. I asked him to do some good pro-social behavior, do something nice for someone. And he said, what do I get if I do it? And I said, you don't get anything for doing the right thing. I thought he was being a little wise guy by asking that. But if the kid's a severe behavioral problem, maybe you would give him something. So being aware that positive reinforcement, we've got to apply it. And the golden ratio of praise to critique, I've heard it's usually 3-to-1, but I've heard it even as high as 5-to-1. So I put the upper limit on it. I put the upper end on it. The best coaches, the best teachers, the best leaders, and I'm sure the best teachers are praising to critiquing 5-to-1. That's a tough thing to do. And it doesn't mean, you're kissing the kid's butt or just always, saying great job. But smiling, listening to them, leaning forward, positive body language, that also communicates that 5-to-1 ratio we're talking about. So keeping that in mind. And you have to praise even the smallest examples, especially with the more difficult students. There's a shy or anxious student, and they participate. You've got to be all over that. That's your moment. That's your opportunity to praise the student so then they can start participating more. Obviously, I was a real shy student, very self-conscious. I was this guy. I was the talker, obviously, and got in plenty of trouble for it with my friends in class. But if the talker is being quiet and paying attention that day, not disrupting the class, even though it's something he should be doing, he or she should be doing. Boys aren't always the talkers. So I guess I always felt like that when I was younger. But, letting the student know, you did a good job today, you're paying attention well, you're attentive. So the student feels good about themselves. And I put down there, it's difficult to detect the absence of a behavior. Okay, so it's easy, in other words, it's easy to tell if I'm talking with my friend because it's an observable behavior. But if the next day I'm very quiet and I'm in good behavior, you don't notice anything, so it's difficult to pick up on that. So we have to be paying attention to that one. Remember, what made Sherlock Holmes a great investigator and detective was not that, I hear a dog barking, so there must be something wrong. Sherlock Holmes is able to detect. The dog's not barking today. That's unusual. What's going on over there? So you have to kind of be like the Sherlock Holmes of teachers a little bit there, too. Okay, so the power of context. I see the slides are good. We must not be doing well with time. I'm good? No, it's fine. No, you're right on. You're right. No, you're right on. No, you're good. Okay, so the power of context. This is, if you read Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, and Blink, he's got great stuff out there. He talks about how the environment shapes us. Now, you didn't need to read The Tipping Point or Blink in order to know that. The environment shapes us all the time. So the T versus the U, this is an interesting thing. I learned at one of my ex-girlfriend's orientations for college once. I went with her, and I was paying attention to the people speaking, and what he said was, imagine a traditional classroom, the desks set up in rows. I don't know if you guys do that or not, but the T would be the front and the middle. And generally, people are more attentive when they're in the T, in the front or in the middle. The U represents unattentive. That's really inattentive, but around the T. Now imagine with a last name like Zannetti, borderline ADHD. I was tested for it in 6th grade because the teachers felt, there was probably something wrong going on. Where was I? T, U. I'm in the back end of the T over here. So, not to make an excuse for myself or anything, but I wasn't in necessarily the best seat for myself. So, if that's something you could, tweak, a little thing might go a long way. So, the T versus the U. Separating friends. The Tony Smith example. My buddy Tony and I would play football together. It was my 2nd week of high school. I was in science class. And my mom I was the oldest. I was the oldest son. So, for me, it was like, you got to do this right and everything. And you got to make sure you're well behaved. And, I was in class. I was talking, I was joking around with them. Well, after class, the teacher had detention slips waiting for us right after class. I went over to her. I said, no, my mom's going to kill me. I'll do anything. And I didn't mean to say this, but it just kind of came out. I said, can you split us up? And she said, okay. She put the detention sheets down. And I didn't wind up getting detention that day. And the rest of the school year, more importantly, there wasn't a problem. There wasn't detention. So a little thing like that, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but the power of context, who we're next to, Another thing is put the talker next to a model student or the shy person next to someone who talks maybe a little bit more just so they could observe that behavior up close. It's important, and box them in. Here's what I mean by that. I'm not saying I invented this, but this was something I kind of picked up on through my years of schooling, and this is, imagine we're sitting in normal traditional style classes. So I'm in the U, I'm all the way at the back. If you're facing me, I'm in the back end on the right. So here I am, the last person sitting there. I have one person next to me. I have one person to my diagonal and one person directly in front of me. Well, me being the jokester I've always been in school, I would turn to those people the first day of class and I'd say, this right here is the house. We're in the house right here. We're going to have fun this year. That kind of thing. So when I say box them in, if the house for me was surrounded by model students, and not that you could always do that, not that you have that many model students in the class, it's just one way you could use the environment to shape my behavior. I have the wall on this side, and then here's the people directly next to me. It's not going to help if I have my friends next to me who are also joking around with me. So just being aware of that, boxing them in if you can. All right, we're good with that slide. Body language. Encourage students to act the way you want them to behave. Okay? So act as if. They have to know what attentive looks like. You have to act the way you want to feel. And this doesn't just go for the students, but it goes for ourselves too. If we want to feel more motivated, act motivated. 7 a.m. lifts we had with my wrestling team. I didn't feel like lifting in the morning. They didn't feel like lifting either, but we had to do it. So what did we do? We'd start, pushing each other and yelling and saying motivational things to each other. And lo and behold, everyone woke up and was ready to go. But we acted the way we wanted to feel. So the same thing. If you want to be happy, smile. And usually if you're smiling and laughing, your happiness goes up. If there was a sunshine scale that measured happiness, you wouldn't go from depression to, ecstatic, but you might go from a 20 to a 30. And that's good enough. We're raising our happiness, which is what we're looking to do. The same thing with attention. If we want to raise attentiveness, start acting attentive. So things you could do in class, sitting up, leaning forward, having good positive body language. A deer in the headlights is still. A deer stops. A deer doesn't keep moving around. So thinking about that along those lines. What does attentive look like? And then just tell the students, just pretend you're interested. Just act like you're interested. And you'd be surprised. Again, we might raise them from a 25 to a 32 for paying attention. That's a little more material they're going to get. It's good that you're here to watch us. Asking questions and participating. Asking questions and participating. I have that starred because that's a little bit tougher. But these 4 things, sitting up, leaning forward, wide-eyed, and smiling, those are things you can do right away. Anyone can do that. Right? So acting as if body language. Number 7, expectations. And this is a word I don't even know if it really exists, but I started saying, and I like the jargon, self-hypnotic positive imagery. All right? You have to expect the students to get the material you present them with. Even if it's difficult, you say there's a few steps here, but I know you can do it. I know you're going to get this. And the example we have is the middle school girl. So back when the 12-year-old Jean Zannetti, we were at a party, one of our classmates at the local batting cages or whatever, and the moms were there and the students were there. And one of the mothers told my mom that her daughter had a crush on me. Now, my mom told me later on, the problem was I made a mistake. I wasn't paying attention as usual, and I got the wrong girl. Okay? so I approached the other girl the next day, and with the expectation that she liked me. And so I wound up having a middle school relationship with her, which is a 3-day thing, right? So the point is, though, but I expected it. And when you expect something, you're more likely to get it. So you have to have that positive expectation, or that made-up word that I put, self-hypnotic positive imagery. You have to be stubbornly positive and optimistic in everything you do. Stubbornly positive and optimistic. When you think about mental toughness, you think about grinding it out on a day-to-day basis, working hard, never quitting, and that's all part of mental toughness. But another part of mental toughness that most people don't think about is being stubbornly positive and optimistic. If I could get a little motivational with you, you have to be the positive thinker who sees the invisible, feels the intangible, and does the impossible. So that starts with you. And with the story right here, you always got to do a story in a presentation. So sales managers sent out 2 sales reps into the Australian outback. Okay, the one salesperson came back and said, "There's no opportunity here at all. Natives don't wear shoes." And then the other salesperson came back and said, "Unbelievable opportunity here. Natives don't wear shoes." So same thing that happened, but the one who's stubbornly positive and optimistic. That's got to be you on a regular basis, even when it's tough to do so. I know it's easy coming from the new guy who's been here for 6 weeks. It's another thing when I'm in your shoes, been here for a while and been in the grind and worn down by students. But try to get that back, or try to be more of that. You know, even if we are like that, we could be more like that. All right. 8 role models. So we all need people to look up to. I think that's why they keep making Batman movies and Superman movies and all the X-Men. We like looking up to people. So the students need to know who the role models are of appropriate behavior. Find someone. I could ask a student who, so a student came to me the other day. He has anger control problems. He hits people sometimes when he gets mad. So I said, out of your friends, who do you know controls their anger well? Rattled off 3 people like that. And I said, okay, your homework assignment is to ask those people, what do they do to control their anger by next week, and then come back, to me with that. And right away, so he started doing that. Will that work? Maybe, maybe not. But now at least he was able to identify what the model behavior is and be able to move forward with that. Maybe it has an impact. Get him thinking along those lines. Just be careful not to compare, kids. That's a tough thing. My poor brothers, after the teachers had me, then the next brother would go, oh, you're Zannetti's brother. That's not good. They're quieter than me. And it's funny how sometimes, brothers being so similar, they're also opposite personalities. But nonetheless, you don't want to be saying, oh, you don't want to be, or you got to be more like Johnny. Because then the kid just resents Johnny and wants to be less like him. So be careful with that. But knowing your models, the models for the kids. Next one. The 80-20 rule. Now, you could even take this and just say, any kind of tips or tricks, if you say a trick or a secret that you could give a student, they like hearing that. If it's just I'm teaching you something, you're like, I don't want to learn anything. But everyone wants a secret or the trick. Okay, so here's one of the tricks, an example of one of the tricks that I liked. I kind of came up with it in college. The 80-20 rule applies to most things in life. If I had a vocabulary list of 20 words, and I knew 10 of them and I didn't know 10 of them, generally the way I studied was spend equal time on each word. And then in college, you don't have as much time. So you realize, okay, I better spend all my effort into the 10 words I don't know. Or the 80% of the time studying words I don't know, and then the 20% reviewing the other words. So that was just something that worked for me. We all have little things like that. Anytime you could offer that trick or that secret, that really goes a long way. And presenting material, that goes along with the 80-20 rule also. Think about when you're going to present it or what the lesson is, how you're going to do it. Think about the difficult student more, like 80% of the time, because the model student is going to be able to get it no matter what. They're going to be paying attention no matter what. It's me, here I am on the fence. Am I going to pay attention today? Am I not going to pay attention today? But that goes a long way. Go the extra mile. The best wrestling coach that America ever had, Dan Gable, was one of the best wrestlers also. He would contact the wrestler's high school coach. He's a college coach. He'd contact the high school coaches, the parents. He would have to do interviews with them. Go the extra mile. Try to talk to them, see what they think. And now middle school, they're going to have a little more feedback for you than they would in elementary school. Not that they're going to be the complete expert on themselves and totally self-aware, but it might go a long way. I would have liked teachers to ask me what I think. I think they'd be surprised with the answers I would give for what they could do for my behavior. I was happy to offer that. Come to me if we need to do a behavioral plan. We did a few of those already. So, we're going to try to keep pushing forward with that. And the next one, encourage activities. I think I made 11 here because really this would be number 10. I think I have 10 for the next one. But encourage activities. Like I said before, we were born to move. People want to move. People want to express themselves creatively. Sports, choir, student council, band, anything. Just have something they do that they can get involved in. It provides an outlet for them, especially overactive students. It gives people who maybe are shy and anxious a way to kind of come out of their shell more, social opportunities, and also we can use it against them. So if the student has activities, there's something you could hold over them. If they don't behave or they don't do the things they're supposed to do, you could use that. Bringing us to the last one, beyond the material education being more about the grades. It's funny, we have this whole positive slides in the last one. Education more than the grades, life lessons. Sometimes the consequences have to be there, and students need to learn. But it's more than just grasping history and math and how to write. It's also that if they're doing something wrong, they have to face the consequences. The other day, I was kind of blown away a little. Kid in school suspension, and I said, okay, well, do they get zeros for their classwork that day? Like their grades are going to go down. And I heard that they don't. And I remember when I was in school, they do.
No, that's odd. I find that very odd that they don't.
Yeah, when I was in school, I didn't get suspended, but that was one of those things that my mom would tell me, if you get suspended, you're going to get a 0 for all your coursework that day. And that makes sense, because if you think about it in the real world, what am I learning for life? It's like, if I get arrested, no matter how good of a doctor, a lawyer, or rich business owner I am, I don't get paid that day, and rightfully so. So that's what the kids have to learn. There's going to be consequences out there. If their grades take a little bit of a hit, then so be it, to teach that lesson. Because I got the impression there were some parents that as long as they got the grades, the social and the other stuff didn't matter as much. Well, that's not the only thing there is, grades. It's getting along with people. It's being able to, come out of your shell. It's about controlling yourself. So life lessons, be mindful of that. Wonderful positive talk, and then we end with something like that, consequences. But it's not all negative. Last one is change the world. That's why you became teachers, and that's why you're doing what you're doing. I would think you're trying to make a difference in kids' lives. And again, it's easy for me to say 6 weeks into it. Very different when you've been doing it for a while. But if I could be that spark that helps get you remotivated by that, then let's do it. Get back to your roots, make the changes. You're doing it. Like I said, a ton of respect for teachers. So keep doing it, and don't be a stranger. My door is always open. Anything anyone wants to talk about, or any ideas or feedback, I'd love to have it. And finally, the last thing, Kelly Zicka was nice enough to provide me these handouts. I wasn't on the ball with it, but she was. This is stuff that we talked about finding out what kind of learner the student is. Pretty interesting thing you could do with them. They circle which ones they believe they are, and then there's a score, and then it tells them what things are along their lines, what kind of learner they are. So, not bad. Everyone can take one of these. Behavioral plans, like we were talking about before. I had one of these when I was in 7th grade. I was in history and English, and obviously never sitting still. My mom had them fill it out, and the teacher knew enough about me, found out enough about me that it was springtime. I wanted to go to the Bishop Bar Carnival in 2 weeks. And guess what? That was held over my head those 2 weeks. If you don't do well, you're going to circle. We're going to have a no circled. And guess what? You're not going to be able to go to the carnival. So that's why it's a good thing to have this. That's a good example for everyone. This one, overall, general modifications and accommodations. When you look at it, it's like pretty straightforward. I already know this stuff. But again, how well am I applying it, and can I be applying it better? And maybe if you get 1 or 2 out of these, you consider it a win, something new. And then finally, here's the positive reinforcement document here. Redirecting language, reminding language, and reinforcing language, different things. But again, like I said, any little thing you could pick up, it's a good thing. Like I said, we're either growing or we're dying. We got to be growing, and the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. So, bring it in, team on 3. Very good, very good. All right, so we'll get these out for you. Everyone's got to sign in.
And then we go online and fill this out?
I think we go on. We go online and fill it out. Yeah.
The exit slip, and that'll get us into the. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I have one of these?
Yeah. Take one of all of them.
Sorry. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely. 28 minutes.
Be tired.
Yeah, we do this 7 times?
Yeah.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
I do 12 times. Well, 11 classes in 2 buildings.
And that's why it's like, it's the level of respect for teachers is real high.
Yeah. But no, you're very understood.
Yeah.
It's good.
Thank you.
Oh, God.
Top 10 ways to motivate your child,
I'll ask again.
student, and yourself. Take care.
Shouldn't he be